What the hell are you doing here?
So, let's see. Yes, of course. You came in today to talk about an affair you were having. Am I right?
Wait a minute, don't say anything more, please.
Wait, what? Mitch, darling, you know this doctor?
Well, no, I don't.
Thank you very much, Miss Patricia, for taking such good care of my husband here. My name is Harriet. I'm 35 years old and I work as a certified OBGYN. In my 20s, when I first started working, fresh out of university as a doctor, I was so concentrated on my work that I don't think I had a proper break for an entire year before the hospital gave me a week's leave. In a nutshell, I was working hard at my job. Part of me wanted to get married, but I didn't think I had time for that. And before I knew it, 5 years had passed, working and helping my patients with their issues. I eventually got to my 30s, and I started getting used to my job a little. I'd settled down a whole lot, and now that I have a lot more time on my hands, I've started to consider marriage more seriously. I tried attending marriage matchmaking parties, but perhaps it's because I'm a doctor that the only questions the guys at these parties ever asked me were about my annual income. It didn't take long for me to suspect that a bunch of these chowheaders were only interested in landing a woman that made a lot of money. So I deemed it a condemned slice of infidelity, and never considered that option again. The only other option were guys who fell completely silent the moment I tell them that I work as a doctor. It was as though that was nothing but a bullet that destroyed their vocal cords. If these marriage matchmaking parties weren't going to work, what was I supposed to do to find someone nice? That's when I had a junior high school reunion for the first time in a while. And that's also where I met Mitch, my current husband. Back in the olden days, Mitch didn't really stand out in particular, but he always had a lot of people around him. He now worked for a very prestigious company, and the girls flocked to him. In their 30s themselves, it looked like I wasn't the only one who was in a hurry to get married. I finally had a chance to talk to Mitch during the second round of the party. After, we left the restaurant and headed into a bar. When we talked together, we found we shared the same hobbies, and we both never joked about our work. We both considered our work our deepest pride, and needless to say, it felt nice to talk with someone with this same level of passion for work. I could relate to him a lot in many aspects, and it's totally safe to say we hit it off, and then we started dating. 3 years later, we got married. Even though we were eventually married, we were both pretty busy, and there were times when we didn't see each other very often. When I was especially busy, I'd sometimes stay at the doctor's dormitory adjacent to the hospital. During one particular time, I have been so busy, I couldn't go back home for a whole week. But I decided that I needed to go home, what with all my business finally dying down and all. I finished work early and got home before my husband. I didn't tell him that I was coming home because I decided to surprise him. Mitch was also very busy at work, and he hardly ever came home on time. So I thought I'd relax a little by watching a movie. While watching a movie, Ready Player One to be more specific, I cast my eyes around the living room. For some reason, my gut told me something was odd, and sure enough, I discovered why. There were absolutely no photographs from our wedding. There is a shelf next to the TV where we kept our wedding photographs, and I spent a good amount of time looking everywhere on that particular shelf. I also looked behind the TV, as well as the other shelves that surrounded it. I thought it was strange that I couldn't find anything, and as I was looking for them, I heard my husband walking in through the door.
Wait a second. You're home.
Yes, honey, I'm finally home. I got off work early today, and I thought I'd come home to surprise you. Can I ask you something? Where did you move our wedding photos?
Oh, the wedding photos.
He was clearly upset, but then he quickly responded.
I was thinking that there's a better place for them to be.
As he said so, he strode over to the living room closet, reached up onto the topmost platform, and brought a big frame of us in our wedding outfits.
I do think this is a good place for it, though. What do you think?
He put the frame on the kitchen counter. It honestly looked perfect. Well, that's good. But, you didn't have to put them in the closet, right? We could have talked about where the best place is. On the kitchen counter is an awesome choice, though. Gotta admit.
Yeah, but I thought I'd change it up with a surprise for you, you know? You have been working hard lately, so I thought it would be a nice thing to come home to.
Well, you certainly surprised me when I discovered it missing. Thanks for trying to surprise me, honey. It's a wonderful idea. And I said nothing more thereafter. Mitch then strode, or rather scampered upstairs to take a bath. In the meantime, I had one more thing on my mind, and I decided to take a look. When I'd initially come back into the house, I immediately smelled something abnormal about the house. There's a sweet smell in the air, and I don't think it was a man's perfume. I thought it was a woman's perfume. And what's more, my husband doesn't use perfume or cologne at all, so we can be absolutely sure that it's not his perfume. I went to my husband's closet in his room and discovered the same smell, stronger this time, on some pieces of his outerwear. A few items reeked of the intruding scent, and I was sure it was because he came in contact with a woman. Maybe he had an affair while I was away for so long because of work. That's what I thought, but I decided against questioning my husband for the time being. Mitch was smart. So even if I questioned him right then and there, I was sure he'd find some way to cast all the blame aside. I told myself I'd better make sure he can't get away with it by gathering as much evidence as I could. I thought it would be more definitive. Now, I don't have any evidence at all, but the smell, that was definitely suspicious. And also, the way he was acting hadn't gone by unnoticed either. That just piled on the suspicion. I took the afternoon off the next day and headed to a trusted detective agency with a request for assistance. I had decided to ask them to look into Mitch and see if he really was seeing someone else. The detective who took care of me, who went by the name of Travis, gave me an excellent piece of advice, which was that in the event I was suspicious of him, setting up a surveillance camera in secret was always a good way to completely confirm or disprove those suspicions. So I did just that. I bought a couple of small, high-quality surveillance cameras for a reasonable price and set them up, hidden in the living room, the bathroom, and both our bedrooms. I then stayed at the doctor's dormitory for a few days to let the camera record my husband, as well as any potential lovers. After a few days, I returned home only to take my cameras and went back to the doctor's dorm. I checked the footage, and sure enough, there indeed was a woman. And she was coming and going as though the house was hers and not mine. She seemed like a calm, composed woman, the very picture of ideal femininity. She didn't look like the kind of woman anyone would cheat on their own wife with. Like, she seemed innocent and wouldn't dare touch a man taken. But then again, this opportunity allowed me to learn again how to never judge a book by its cover. The footage showed the two of them making out in the living room, and after tearing their clothes off, went into my bedroom. The rest of the footage was just too gruesome to watch. And when I took a closer look at the footage from the living room, I could confirm there were no wedding photos. I'm sure Mitch was getting rid of all evidence of me, just to prepare for the bitch's arrival. I threw the camera to the floor in a passionate fury. I just couldn't keep my cool. I'm not the type of person who gets angry very easily. But in that instance, my willingness not to forgive these two traitors allowed my emotions to choose revenge unanimously. The only question was how. How was I going to get my revenge on my husband? My brain was flooded with so many thoughts and ideas, and I swear, that thinking session left my brain more burnt out than all my time studying to become an OBGYN combined. I was just ready to explode. Then, I got a call from the university hospital. The caller asked me to come and support them with their work the following week. Since I wasn't, and still aren't, a general practitioner, it was common for other establishments to come to get me for some assistance. I often negotiated with the director of these other medical institutions, and it wasn't often when I declined their request for my assistance. And I enjoyed this sort of lifestyle. Whenever I went to other places, I naturally got different patients, and I thought this opportunity to get experience with many more people was fun and fulfilling. The next week, I went to the university hospital, from which I got the request. I was examining patients, as usual, when someone totally unexpected came into my diagnosis room. I frankly couldn't contain my bewilderment. I was so surprised I let out a small yeep. Standing there before me, a few meters away, was the very same woman I'd seen on my surveillance cameras. The woman whom Mitch had been having an affair with. Her name turned out to be Miss Patricia Van Dyke. Not only was I surprised to find her here, but I was also surprised that I didn't have to hire the detective agency again to check in on her background information. The sheer suddenness of her appearing almost made me stagger to my knees. But I was in a hospital, and so was she. She was the patient, and I was her doctor. Personal issues aside, I had to help her with her issue. So I went into hyper-focus mode and started my treatment. I've come here to discuss infertility, Doctor. According to Patricia, she was engaged to a certain man, and they both wanted to conceive a child before getting married later on in the year. She told me that she and her partner had started trying to have a baby over a year ago, to no avail. Patricia then thought that something might be wrong with the fertility of one of them, and thought it would be best to check it out. That's why she stopped by that day. Her fiancé was busy with work that day, which was why he couldn't attend this particular appointment. Per medical protocol, I proceeded to ask her how her fiancé was as a person. She was very honest. She told me everything she thought was relevant. Lo and behold, she admitted that my darling was married once, and he tried to conceive children with his former wife too, you see, but like us, they didn't have much luck with that. 2 years ago, his former wife passed away, and that made fertility testing impossible. A fertility check before getting married is known as a bridal checkup, is it not? Yes, that's right. You know a lot about medicine, Miss Van Dyke. By the way, in the event one of you does have a problem, how do you want to proceed with treatment? I think we're on the same page. We truly believe that the time and patience will find our beautiful child. We're both willing to take treatment and to do our best to cure any problems. Because her fiancé is on the same page as her, Miss Van Dyke seemed to be thinking very positively about this whole situation. I listened to her as though I never even recognized her as my husband's lover, and as her doctor, I genuinely wished to help her. I think it'll be all right, Doctor. He did mention he was certain it was because of his ex-wife that they couldn't conceive any children. Miss Van Dyke was talking very happily, hopeful that the trouble would pass eventually. As for me, not only was it the first time that I realized I was already considered to have never existed, but that he thought I was the reason why Mitch and I couldn't have any children. I was stunned more than saddened upon discovering this truth, to be honest. What surprised me was the endeavors to conceive a child had lasted for more than a year. That alone seemed to suggest the relationship had gone on longer than that amount of time. I just couldn't believe what I was realizing by this point. But, like I told myself at the beginning of this, I was the doctor here, and she was the patient. Now was not the time to explode in all fury and malice. I professionally told her that she should be examined, and I made an appointment. Just to be sure, I advise that your significant other also have an examination with you. Do you think you can convince him to come in on the appointed day? I think so, but he does work for a large, prestigious company. I don't know his schedule will allow it, but I'll do what I can, Doctor. Okay, now she was actually bragging. Well, hate to break it to you, stupid, but this man who works for this prestigious company is none other than my own husband. Is what I almost said, but I held my tongue. Separate the professional from the private. Nowhere is more important than in a doctor's office. I'd been struggling with this for a long time. How to get my revenge on Mitch, and on this woman whom he was having an affair with. I finally found a juicy opportunity to let everything unfurl, and my head that was spinning, because I'd been so busy that day, calmed down quite a bit. I went to work at a different hospital on the day they came in for their fertility examinations, so I couldn't be in charge of them. But the day the results were to be announced, coincidentally, was a day I was working for that same hospital. I was beginning to worry whether or not I'd be able to keep my cool. Now that I was a mere minutes away from catching him red-handed in 4K, my lust for vengeance was ready to burst, and I took a couple deep breaths to help calm my mind. After what seemed an eternity, the time to finally call for my husband and his lover had arrived. I explained the situation to the young nurse who was assigned to assist me in my work, and the sweetheart went out of the room with a smile as I called Miss Van Dyke's name. Mitch followed the woman inside my diagnosis room. Miss Van Dyke had an anxious look, perhaps concerned about the results of her examinations, but my husband's face, boy oh boy, it was glorious to see that his complexion was getting paler with every passing second.
But why are you, oh shit.
Mitch's expression was one of a child who was busted for breaking their mother's favorite mug, but it was too late. Wait, what? Mitch, darling, you know this doctor? He doesn't answer, trembling with panic. No wonder he's so surprised. He knew I usually worked at Blue Cross Hospital downtown, and that I also often went to various other institutions to support them with their clientele. But I didn't tell him I was going to be working there. I guess seeing me here was the last thing he expected. The woman whom he's having an affair with, Miss Van Dyke, is confused, and my husband was completely speechless. This atmosphere was the very definition of awkward, and after some time in this hell, I announced the truth. So, let's see. Yes, of course. You came in today to talk about an affair you were having, am I right? Excuse me? Please forgive me for never formally introducing myself. My name is Harriet Borden, and yes, I'm the wife of this gentleman here, standing behind you. Unfortunately, it seems I'm still alive in this world. I only recently learned of your existence, actually. I never thought my loyal husband would ever have an affair, let alone endeavor to conceive a child with another woman for more than a year. I was shocked to discover the truth, but I don't suppose you knew who I truly was, do you, Miss Van Dyke? An affair? I'm sorry, I don't think I can process this right. Can you explain it more clearly to me, darling? She looked at him as she said so. Mitch replied to me in a low, quiet voice.
Hey, Harriet, don't do this, please.
But why in the world did I have to stop? and the fun was just about to begin. Well, for now, I really don't care if my husband cheated on me or not. You didn't come back here for that, but instead to hear the results of your infertility examinations, right? Actually, Mitch and I couldn't have children either, and we've also been meeting to get some testing done. But because we've been so busy with our jobs lately that we haven't been able to do it all. But I thought that if I was the cause of the problem, I thought it would be better to get checked out as soon as possible, and should the need arise, start treatment. According to my results, and yours as well, from what I can tell, there's nothing wrong with you nor me. Wait, hold on. Nothing wrong with neither you nor me? Do you mean that he's the source of our problems with conceiving children? From the beginning of my marriage with Mitch, I'd wanted children. I told my husband what I thought about the matter, and he agreed with me, of course. We went on trying to get me pregnant, but we just couldn't get lucky. And what with being an OBGYN and all, I knew that I had to take a test. I knew that it was better to get treatment as soon as possible, so I thought I'd get it checked out before I asked Mitch for some examinations. My results conclusively showed I didn't have any problems. And with this particular case, I saw his results when he came in for the examination. Everything satisfied me greatly. Mitch's infertility was the reason why we couldn't conceive a child. Remind me, he is your fiancé, is he? Yes, he is. Well, your fiancé has been diagnosed with azoospermia, which is a man's ejaculation contains no measurable sperm. No way. If you'd like to be treated, I'd be happy to negotiate. What would you like to do? Statistically, this gentleman's chances of getting either of us pregnant is darn near zero, I'm afraid. In other words, without immediate treatment, I don't believe it's possible to conceive any children. I started working the ideal doctor, as if nothing had happened, and that the affair had been forgotten altogether. I just told them the results, matter-of-factly. We will think about it, Doctor. I'm sorry. That being said, neither of them seemed to want to talk about this. Instead, wanted to talk about something else. They just sat in the examining chairs for a long time, looking as though they wanted to say something, but neither of them ever did. Please come back when you decide what you want to do. I'm sure you'll be fine if you work together. Please take good care of yourselves. I half forced him to leave the room right then, and even after that, I continued doing my job as doctor without ever hesitating, nor letting what I just experienced affect me in any way. I was already completely hollow by the time I saw him together with that woman, and I only considered him a soulless prick thereafter. I went home once my work was over, where I found my husband sitting on his knees. Whether he was doing it all afternoon, or if he simply heard me coming home and strode over to where he knelt, as if to show me he was doing so all day, I don't know. But I wondered what he was hoping to change by simply kneeling in apology.
I'm so sorry about this, but you don't understand.
I think I understand everything. What do you suggest you do about it? Make up excuses? Watch yourself, buddy. He looked as though he was about to start making excuses, so I quickly interrupted him before he even had a chance. With that, I put him directly on the spot and psychologically pushed him into a corner. I was surprised today. I never thought I'd find out the way I did. I'm so disappointed in you. I ask again, what do you plan on doing now? Right after I told him that, he sank deeper onto his knees and told me the whole story. The affair lasted a year and a half. The woman whom he was having the affair with was the daughter of the president of a major business partner of my husband's company. It's apparently a very big conglomerate. My husband's company is big too, but alas, the position of president was eternally out of his reach. For the current president had a married son who had a son of his own. He thought that if he could marry the president's daughter, he might one day become the head of a large, prestigious conglomerate himself. So he went on trying to blame me for not being able to have children. And he was even thinking of using that as leverage for divorcing me. Since I wasn't at home either, he kept inviting her to his home, and they had a lot of dates. He thought that having her over at his house would make him more trustworthy in her eyes, because he needed to be thought of as single. He said that all the photographs of the two of us on our wedding day were put away in a secluded part of the house. As for the woman herself, she was indeed lied to, but I just couldn't understand the nerve behind the audacity of using the belongings of his wife, who was alive, by the way, without permission. And even if his wife really was in her grave, I still couldn't imagine anyone using her belongings after her passing. Honestly, it's a bit gruesome. I just didn't see any logic behind her using my clothes and my personal items. The more I listened to my husband and his ridiculous stories, the more I wanted to puke all over his pathetic face. I just couldn't anymore. I want a divorce. I can't do this with you.
Okay, I understand. I deserve it. I'm so sorry.
He didn't display any resistance, and thanks to that, it was an easy divorce. I'm sure he was depressed over the fact that he was the cause of his being unable to have children. I'd also like to file for alimony, so if you have anything to discuss with me, you may do so through my lawyer. I have a lot of evidence, so I think your responsibility will be conclusive.
I see. I understand. I'm so sorry.
I briefly spoke with him about the near future and what would most likely happen, in legalities, before he left the house. The divorce was finalized soon thereafter. My husband was found guilty of adultery and was ordered to pay me the alimony I specifically requested. As for Miss Van Dyke, she told her parents about how she had a relationship with a married man, emphasizing the fact that he had lied to her. They were absolutely furious. And Mitch's boss at his job heard about the incident through the grapevine, and nowadays, he's fallen miles away from the ladder of success. His career path severely derailed. He's now making a laughable living working tiny jobs next to a window in some far-off corner of the company. Nothing at all like the life of promotions and glory as he once envisioned would occur. Perhaps Mitch thought he could at least keep the woman whom he was having an affair with, because...
I'm completely divorced now. My wife and I are no more. You're the only woman I think about now.
You lied to me once, and my faith in you's been lost, you know?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Harriet and I have been apart for quite some time, honest. It's just that we have never gone through with a divorce, but it's all over now. Our happiness can resume course, just as we planned together. I love you, Patricia.
I already called a lawyer, and I already arranged to sue you in court for violating chastity rights. Don't ever come near me, or talk to me in whatever way again. Although my husband was a married man, he had tried to talk about marriage with Miss Van Dyke. The woman really did go on to sue him on the grounds for a violation of chastity rights, and won the case. Now, Mitch had to pay alimony to me and his lover, with his unfulfilling job next to a window in a godforsaken region of the company. There was no way he could leave to be unemployed for even a brief moment. And as of now, he is always under the watchful eye of his co-workers. And once the whole fiasco settled down, I got a call from Miss Van Dyke. She told me that although she hadn't known Mitch was married at the time of their affair, she wanted to accept responsibility for hurting me, and offered to pay me alimony herself. I responded by saying I didn't want anything to do with her again, and to not contact me again before hanging up. I appreciated her kind gesture, but her betrayal left all opportunity for reconciliation destroyed. Soon after the divorce, I went on to sell the house Mitch and I had been living in together. Perhaps the thought of that woman wearing most of my clothes and using my personal items made me sick to the stomach, because as I moved out, I got rid of most of my belongings. Now, I live in a new house with new furniture and appliances and with a new collection of nice clothes. It was quite the refreshing restart. From now on, I plan to focus all of my energy on my work because I find it extremely rewarding despite it being demanding. And I'm going to work hard towards a nice life.